I used to believe that trust was the foundation of marriage. That when you love someone completely, you don't need to question where they go or who they're with. I used to think that GPS trackers were for paranoid husbands and jealous wives, not for men like me, who had built the perfect life. I was wrong about everything. The day I opened that Amazon package and held a small black tracking device in my hands, I crossed a line I never thought I'd cross. But sometimes, the only way to protect what you've built is to destroy the illusion that it was ever safe to begin with. My name is Ryan Mitchell. I'm 33 years old, work as a senior operations analyst at a mid-sized consulting firm, and I've always been the kind of man who plans everything twice. I believe in loyalty, in keeping your word, in building something solid that lasts. I thought I'd found someone who shared those values. I met Melissa 6 years ago at our mutual friend Sarah's wedding reception. The ceremony had been beautiful. One of those perfect September afternoons where the light hits everything just right. But it was during the reception that my world changed. I was standing by the bar, nursing a whiskey and watching couples spin across the dance floor. When I saw her, she wore an emerald green dress that hugged her curves perfectly, her auburn hair falling in waves over her shoulders. When she laughed at something her friend said, the sound cut through the music and conversations like it was meant specifically for my ears. I found myself walking over before I'd even decided to move. "You look like someone who doesn't dance," she said, green eyes sparkling with mischief as I approached. "You look like someone who could change that," I replied, surprising myself with the smoothness of it. We danced until midnight. Her hand felt perfect in mine, her body moving against me like we'd been doing this for years instead of hours. When the last song ended and the lights came up, I knew I wasn't going to let her walk away. Our courtship lasted 2 years. 2 years of long conversations over dinner, weekend trips to small towns we'd never visited, quiet Sunday mornings reading newspapers in bed. She was everything I'd been looking for: intelligent, funny, supportive. When she laughed at my terrible jokes or listened patiently as I explained some boring work project, I felt like I'd won the lottery. Our wedding was perfect. We held it at a small lakeside venue about an hour outside the city. Melissa looked radiant in her white dress, tears streaming down her face as she promised to love, honor, and cherish me until death do us part. I believed every word. When I slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her as my wife, I felt like everything in my life had finally clicked into place. There was just one small detail that Harold, Melissa's father, insisted on before the wedding: a prenuptial agreement. At first I was insulted. Did he think I was marrying his daughter for money? But Harold was old school, protective of his family's assets, and he made it clear the wedding wouldn't happen without it. The prenup was straightforward except for one clause that seemed almost ridiculous at the time: adultery. If either party cheated, they forfeited all claims to marital assets. Everything would stay with the faithful spouse. I remember sitting in the lawyer's office, pen in hand, looking at that clause and almost laughing. It felt like insurance against something that would never happen. "Are you sure about this?" Melissa had asked, her voice soft with concern. "It seems so final." "Babe," I'd replied, taking her hand, "I'm never going to give you a reason to worry about this." "Are you?" She'd smiled, kissed my cheek, and signed her name with a flourish. "Never," she'd answered with confidence. Our honeymoon in the Caribbean was like a dream. 7 days of white sand beaches, crystal blue water, and making love like teenagers. We barely left our beachfront suite. Melissa would lie next to me in the morning, her skin golden from the sun, and I'd think about how lucky I was, how perfectly everything had worked out. We came home to the house I'd bought 6 months before our engagement, a modest 3-bedroom colonial in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. The mortgage was manageable on my salary, the yard was big enough for the kids we planned to have, and Melissa loved the kitchen with its granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. During our 2nd year of marriage, Melissa made the decision to stop working. She'd been a part-time graphic designer, freelancing for small businesses, but she said she wanted to focus on making our house a home. I supported the decision completely. My income was enough to cover our expenses, and I loved coming home to find dinner prepared, the house spotless, Melissa waiting for me with a glass of wine and stories about her day. Our life fell into a comfortable rhythm. Weekend brunches at our favorite cafe, Saturday afternoons at the farmer's market. Sunday evenings planning the week ahead. We talked about starting a family, maybe taking a European vacation next summer, possibly upgrading to a bigger house in a few years. Everything felt stable, secure, perfect. But 6 weeks ago, something shifted. It started small, so small I almost missed it. Melissa mentioned that her sister Amanda was going through a rough patch. Amanda lived about 2 hours away in a small town called Millfield, and she'd recently separated from her husband. She needed support, Melissa explained. Sisterly advice, someone to lean on during a difficult time. At first, the visits seemed reasonable. Once a week, maybe twice. Melissa would drive out on a Saturday morning, spend the day with Amanda, and come home by evening. She'd tell me about their conversations, how Amanda was holding up, what they'd done together. Shopping, long walks, heart-to-heart talks over coffee. It all seemed perfectly normal. But then the frequency increased. What had been weekly visits became twice a week, then 3 times. The trips got longer, too. What used to be day trips became overnight stays. Melissa would pack a small bag, kiss me goodbye Friday evening, and not return until Sunday afternoon. Amanda really needs me right now, she'd explain, her voice soft with concern. I'm the only family she has nearby. I wanted to be understanding. Family is important. Sisters stick together during hard times. Amanda was going through a divorce. Of course, she needed support. But something in my gut started to twist with each departure, each extended absence. The math didn't add up either. 4-hour round trips 3 times a week, full days away from home, late returns even on supposedly short visits. When I'd ask about specifics, what they'd done, where they'd gone, Melissa's answers became increasingly vague. Oh, you know, just sister stuff, she'd reply with a wave of her hand. Talking, crying, eating too much ice cream. I felt guilty for doubting her. This was my wife, the woman I'd promised to trust completely. Amanda was her sister. Of course, Melissa wanted to help her through a difficult time. I was being paranoid, selfish, unreasonable, but the feeling in my stomach wouldn't go away. It sat there like a stone, growing heavier with each passing day. I'd watch Melissa pack her overnight bag, kiss me goodbye, promise to call when she arrived safely, and something inside me would whisper that this wasn't right. I started paying closer attention. The way she'd check her phone constantly in the days leading up to a visit. How she'd disappear into the bathroom for long conversations that ended abruptly when I came near. The new perfume she'd started wearing, more expensive than anything in her usual collection. Small changes that might mean nothing, or everything. 3 weeks ago, I broke. I did something I never thought I'd do. Something that went against every principle I believed in about trust and marriage. But the doubt was eating me alive and I needed to know the truth. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I was overreacting. But when that small package from Amazon arrived 3 days later, I didn't send it back. I opened it. The GPS tracker was smaller than I'd expected. About the size of a matchbox, black plastic with a magnetic backing. The Amazon listing had promised real-time location tracking, 30-day battery life, and discreet monitoring for peace of mind. Reading those words had made my stomach turn, but not enough to stop me from ordering it. I'd spent 3 days staring at the unopened package on my desk, telling myself I wouldn't actually use it. This was paranoia. This was crossing a line I'd never thought I'd cross. This was violating the trust that should exist between husband and wife. But every time Melissa mentioned another visit to Amanda, every time she packed that overnight bag with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, the package seemed to stare back at me. The morning I finally did it, Melissa was in the shower. I could hear the water running, her voice humming something cheerful and off-key. It was Thursday. She'd already announced her plans for another weekend trip to Millfield. Amanda's having a really hard time, she'd said over breakfast. I think I'll stay through Sunday this time. My hands were shaking as I slipped outside in the dawn cold, still wearing my pajamas and slippers. The GPS tracker was so small it felt like nothing in my palm. The magnetic backing clicked against the metal with a soft snap as I attached it under her car's rear bumper, hidden behind the spare tire mounting. The whole thing took less than 30 seconds. Walking back to the house, I felt like I'd committed a crime. The guilt was suffocating, heavy and thick in my chest. What kind of husband tracks his wife? What kind of marriage requires surveillance?